Gosh, I look like a ragamuffin. Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing all of the books that I read in January. This was originally going to be a December and January wrap up because honestly I can't remember the last time I did a wrap up because I've been in a reading slump for so long. To be quite frank, I didn't log the books that I read in December into my Goodreads, so I genuinely don't remember them. I know, really bad, but I do know the ones that I read in January because I logged them in my Goodreads and in my reading journal, so that's something. Okay, I have a very small physical stack here. A couple of them, like one of them is like up there and it's just hard to get to, like it's underneath a giant stack of books that I'm just not gonna get out. One's in my car and it's cold outside, so I'm not going to my car to get it. And then I think the other one I don't own. Okay, these are in no particular order. Actually, I'm gonna go over the one that I don't have physically with me. I read 8 books in the month of January, which is kind of big for me right now because I was in like the longest slump of my life. So the fact that I read this many books is a win. I would like for it to have been more. It could have been more, but I was slacking a little bit. So the first one I want to talk about is Every Vow You Break by Peter Swanson. I listened to this on Scribd and what did I end up giving this one? I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I did like this one. It's a thriller, but it didn't feel very thriller-like to me until like the less than half of the book. It just felt like there were like some things that you were wondering about, but it wasn't like keeping me on edge, like spooky enough, I feel like. But it's possible that it was supposed to be like that. It was kind of a nice change of pace for me, I'm not gonna lie. This is one of the very few audiobooks that I have actually enjoyed listening to. I just tend to rate audiobooks really low for some reason, but this one I thought was great, and I'm trying to think. I think that was the only reason that I took off a star, is because it didn't feel like a thriller until the end. Like I could understand how like they were trying to make it a thriller, but it just didn't feel thrillery. The next book that I read is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. You guys know how I feel about Riley Sager, okay? He is my best friend, 100%. He did let me down a little bit with The House Across the Lake, but this was just like your classic Riley Sager, and I loved it. I had such a good time with this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars also. I can't remember the reason that I didn't give it 5. I think this one just like didn't hit. You know, like some of his really have like been like, yeah, that's amazing. This one just didn't really do that for me. But I really loved the camp, like summer camp counselor vibe of this whole book, because it just felt like a classic like slasher almost, and I really was enjoying that. I love the characters in this. Obviously the plot twist was amazing. I feel like I can't ever predict Riley Sager's plot twists, like ever. Like I really try my hardest and it just never happens for me, because when you think you hit the plot twist, like you actually didn't. There's more to the story. Yeah, so I really enjoy this one. I have officially read all of Riley Sager's books, so feeling really confident with that. And next up I read One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. To be quite frank, I actually DNF'd this book. I tried to read it for the readathon. I got like 140 something pages in it, and this was doing nothing for me. Didn't care about the characters, didn't care who did it. I felt like, I don't know, it just didn't suck me in at all. I felt like the character development wasn't very good. And then there were so many characters also. Some of you guys know that like when there's multiple POVs and multiple characters that we're following, I just have a really hard time with the book, because to me it makes the book a lot slower, because you're having to, like by the time you've gone through a day in every character's life, you've been in the book for a week. So I don't know, to me it's just really hard for me to like books like that. So I wasn't a fan of this one at all, actually. Yeah, I DNF'd this one. But I count my DNFs as a read, because I typically take the time to, like I invest time into it to figure out if I like it. And I just didn't. And to read 140 pages of this book and it still wasn't doing anything for me, yeah, I'm voting this one off the island. Like no. This is not what I meant to grab. Oh, where does this go? I guess it goes, no, it doesn't go right there, it goes right here. Okay, the next book that I read was a reread, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this one. Why is there a bookmark in this book? Okay. 5 stars, really love this book. I just love this world. I love these characters. I had a really, really good time with it. I annotated it the first time I read it, clearly. And I was gonna annotate it this second time just to like see if anything else stuck out to me, but I just kind of left it as is. But yes, really enjoyed this one. I'm planning to get to like the whole series this year. I'm really trying to prioritize series right this year. I've never prioritized them like this before. But I have Crown of Midnight, Assassin's Blade, and Heir of Fire, and Queen of Shadows. So I have up until that point. I do plan to do a Throne of Glass readathon, just because I think it would be really fun. And I don't know, I would want to watch that. So I'm like, maybe I'll just film it. But I don't know when that's gonna happen. So reread this one, had a lovely time. Okay, the next book that I read is The 1000th Floor. This was another DNF for me. This one, again, too many characters. There was like 6 characters we were following. And I was just kind of like, what is going on? I read really far into this one. I want to say I got page like 220 or something, and I was still like, what is the point? You didn't see how the characters connected until way too late in the book, in my opinion. It was way too late. It was another one that just read really young. I just was not a fan of it. The plot was really, really interesting. Like, I was really excited for that one, because I have like a soft spot for like dystopian novels, because the Divergent series, which is a dystopian novel series, is what got me back into reading. And so it just, any dystopian novel is just kind of nostalgic for me. So I was really looking forward to it, and I just was really let down, and I just like, I didn't love it at all. I was listening to that one on audio while physically reading, and I mean, even with the audiobook, I just could not get through it. I couldn't bear another minute in that book. I had a really hard time. It started off with a really interesting prologue, and like, you want to know what happens, but then it wasn't pointing to that, back to that prologue, like at any point. And then because there were so many characters, by the time you're going through all these characters, to be quite honest, I just didn't care enough for what happened, like where the prologue, what the prologue meant. Like at that point I was like, there's too much going on, I don't even care anymore. And honestly, that's really big for me. For me to DNF a book and not care how it ends really means that I didn't enjoy it. Because sometimes I will DNF a book just because I can't get through it, but like, I'm also curious what happens at the end, but like, I'm not even curious about what happens at the end. I'm not curious about what happened at the end of One of Us's line. Like, no, I just could not do it. The next book that I read is Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. I read These Violent Delights a little over 2 years ago. Loved that one, 5 stars. It was so good. Loved the characters. It's Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in Shanghai, and it was so, so good. Love the story. Love the parallels from the original Romeo and Juliet to this one. Loved the culture. It was really, really good. Like, I genuinely loved that one. Read Our Violent Delights, Our Violent Ends. I keep mixing those titles, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars. A lot of times I feel like I never like the second or the, you know, the rest of the books as much as I would like the first book in a series, and that was true for this. I just didn't, I don't know, I felt like Our Violent Ends was longer than it needed to be. I felt like there was a lot of filler, and I felt like too much happened. Like, I really feel like the way that These Violent Delights ended, like, we could have had a little bit of an extension to These Violent Delights, and it could have just been a standalone. And then we added this book, and I was like, okay. And like, I mean, the plot goes somewhere. Like, it wasn't that it was just all like fluff. It was just more like, it kind of felt like These Violent Delights wasn't supposed to have a second book, but Chloe Gong wanted a second book, so she wrote a second book for it. It kind of just felt messy in places, but I rated it so high because I love those characters. I still loved the story. Like, I loved the plot. I thought it was great. It just felt like it was a little bit unnecessary to me. Like, it was really entertaining, really fun, but again, it just, like, to me, it just wasn't needed. Loved the ending of Our Violent Ends. That definitely bumped up the rating for sure. Loved the way it ended. It was perfect. Next up, I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This I rated 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this one more than I was anticipating because I read Malibu Rising and loved that one. And then I read Seven Husbands, and I hated that one. So I was really nervous for this one. I was like, all right, Janelle, you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. Like, I didn't think it was gonna be an in-between. And I came out really loving this one. It obviously follows Daisy Jones and this band in like the 70s, mainly the 70s, but also some of the 80s, and even a little bit of the 60s, I think, too. And so we're following this band, and the way that this book is written is exactly like a movie. Like, exactly. Like, it's kind of like a documentary feel, but really entertaining. Like, you're getting these like interview responses from the book, and it reads exactly like a movie. Like, I love the transition between like when we would get like an interview segment from like one character where they would leave off, the next character was starting, so you didn't feel like you were reading things multiple times over. There was certain things that you would go over a few times, but it was from different perspectives, so it like kind of gave you like a cool blend of stuff. Loved it for that. The reason why it lost like 0.5 stars is because I felt like in the middle we got to a place where things just felt like it was dragging. Like, it didn't seem like much was going on in the story, and I was just kind of like, okay, like, let's get to something. Like, it just felt a little flat for me. Really loved it for that. I mean, and I started the month off with this. I think this was the second book that I read in the month, and it was like the perfect way to start the month. Like, I loved it so much. So I had a really good time with this one. I highly recommend this one, by the way. I feel like this is like, you guys are probably like, yeah, I read that 2 years ago. Sorry, I just read it, but if you haven't read it, you should read it. And lastly, I read All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This one I also gave 4.5 stars. Really, really liked this one. I was a little bit nervous. I'm always nervous going into a Coho book. I don't know why, but I'm always nervous about it because I'm scared that one of her books are gonna let me down. So I'm always nervous about it because Layla definitely let me down. This one was so amazing. I really loved, this is basically about a girl named Quinn, and she basically is struggling with infertility, and it really just like, it really highlights and kind of supports like people who do struggle with infertility and like the real issues and the real struggles that it brings, and not only like for the woman but also like in a marriage, like the types of arguments and the types of things that you're feeling about each other was very, very real to me, and I really loved it, especially for someone who's been trying over a year to have a baby, and I have just been left with a miscarriage. Like, this book just really hit home for me, and it was one that I could really relate to, and just really like, I just really felt for the main character, and so I loved it personally. I don't know that everybody would love it, because again, it does focus on something really sad, but for me it was great because I could relate to her so well. There were so many things that she thought about herself, that she was scared of, that she was worried about, that I could easily be like, oh, me too. And that is like the biggest thing in books for me. Like, if you can get me to relate and get me to understand on a whole different level, that book deserves a good rating in my opinion. So yeah, I really, really loved it in that sense. Again, I just loved how realistic it was. Like, it wasn't one of your romance butterflies, like everything's gonna be okay. Like, it wasn't like that, and I loved it because it made it so much more relatable. And even some of the things that people would say to her, like, I related to. Like, I have had people say some ridiculous things to me when it comes to having a baby. I can't tell you the amount of people that have told me, just relax. Yeah, no, we've tried that. That's not working. Like, it doesn't have to do with me being not relaxed about it, or like you just need to not stress about it and let it happen in its timing, or like whatever. And I'm like, stop telling me that. Like, literally stop. Or when I did have my miscarriage, having people be like, I can't believe you told them before you told me. Like, just like stuff like that. And like, she experiences that, and I'm just like, yes, like, I am totally there with you. Like, it's a whole other kind of struggle, whole other kind of battle, a whole different mind game that you're playing with yourself. And I think that Colleen Hoover did a great, great job at displaying that. But yes, so those are all of the books that I read in January. I'm pretty satisfied with them. I feel like all of the books that I read got a really high rating, except for 2 books that I DNF'd, but everything else got really good ratings, and I was really satisfied with it. So I don't know, I feel like I can't complain. I think I had a great month, and I'm okay with DNFs, and honestly I am trying to DNF more because I need to stop feeling guilty when I don't like a book. I just don't like the book, so I'm not gonna suffer by reading the book. You guys should do that too. If you don't like a book, you don't have to continue reading it. Just put it away. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was entertaining. I will see you guys in my next one.